Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are doing day 1, data types in C++. And for this task, we'll be exploring how we can declare our own variables in integers, doubles, and string types. And we also learn how we can read in integers, doubles, and strings and assign that to a variable from the console. So finally, we also learn how to use the plus operators to do data transformations on integers, doubles, and strings. And last but not least, how we can tweak the output of our doubles to be printed in specific precisions as we like. So for example, if you want it to be specifically one decimal place, like how we want it to be in our output, we will learn how we can do that by adding in some functions to cout. So with that, let's get started. The first step is to declare variables, integers, doubles, and strings. So we'll be exploring two ways of how we can read in integers, doubles, and strings from the console. The first way is using getline, but unfortunately for the function getline like we saw in day 0, we are only allowed to get the line and pass it into a string variable. So what this means is if we want to use getline, the integers and double variable that we define here must be of type string first. We'll be exploring the second way, which allows us to define integers and doubles. But for now, please bear with me and let's just define them first. So let's define the string as I2. This is really an integer, but we will convert this into integers and doubles later. So finally, we have I2 to represent the integer, D2 to represent the double, and S2 to represent the string on the third line. So first line is integer, second line is double, and third line is the string. So with that, we can really just direct the input from the cin stream object, which is currently reading the input, into I2 for the first line, D2 for the second line, and S2 for the third line. And once we're done, we can print out the sum of both integer variables on a new line. So if you do cout followed by I plus I2 followed by the end line character, you can start to see that C++ starts to complain. And in this case, it's saying that you cannot add a string together with an integer. So we really want I2 to be an integer. So we can cast a string to an integer using the stoi function like this. So once we're done, this is pretty much it. So it has the same effect of we are just converting this intermediate string integer into an integer before we add it together with another integer. So in this case for doubles, it's the same concept here. So it will just be d plus stod. This time we're using stod to convert the string to a double. In this case, we will pass in d2 followed by the end line character. And finally for the string, this is the simplest because S2 is already a string. So to concatenate this, S comes first because S contains hackerrank, followed by is the best place to learn and practice coding. So it will be S plus S underscore 2, followed by the end line character. But in this case, this will fail. And to prove that that's the case, I'll run this. And you can see that the reason why it's failing is because the double is currently printed as a whole number. That's because if your double doesn't have any decimal places, I mean like it's a whole number, for example 8.0, in this case it will just print out 8. So to make it print out decimal points, we can pass in fixed. In this case, fixed would make this cout over here print out the double in 6 decimal places. This is telling C++ like, hey, I would like you to print out this double variable in this fixed number of precision points. Now we are able to get the decimal points out, but now we want to change the number of decimal places that is being printed. So to do that, we can use setprecision. Setprecision is a function. In this case, it takes in the number of decimal places you want this to be printed. So we pass in setprecision 1 to print it in 1 decimal place. So with that, we got the first method of reading the input and printing it out nicely using cout. So now this is the first way. The second way is to use cin directly to read in the input instead of using the getline function. So what this means is we are able to read in the integer and the double directly in the correct type. There is no need for us to read it in as a string. So for this, how this syntax works is you can do it like this. So cin in this syntax would take in the first like word in this case, which is really numbers, in this case 12, and you will read that 12 in. But the thing is, there might be spaces or new line characters after each line of input. So if that happens, your second cin would be reading in that space or the new line character instead. And you do not want that. So to do that, we want to clear any spaces or any new line characters that we see on each line after we read in the integer, and same for the double as well. So we can do that using this method called cin.ignore. Cin.ignore takes in two parameters. The first parameter indicates the number of characters that you want to ignore on that line, or until it hits a certain delimiter. So in this case, I will just assume that I did this question before, so I know that there is no 101 or 102 or more than 100 spaces after 12 and 4.0. So I'm just going to give it a dummy number of 100 characters. And in this case, the second parameter is the number of, is really the character that it's looking for until, to tell it that it should stop ignoring characters. So it's going to ignore 100 characters or until it sees this new line character, which is just the end of the string, like right after the string. So we will do the same for the second line. In a sense, after we read in the double, we are just going to ignore all preceding characters that come after it, or until we see the new line character. So we can remove the casting of string to integers and strings to doubles on the first and second line as well, because now I2 and D2 are both already in integer and double format. So this is totally fine. This works as well. And with that, this is the second method of reading in integers and doubles. We are using cin directly and directing the input of the single word that it just sees into a given variable. So that's pretty much it for this question. I hope this was of value to you. I definitely learned quite a bit as a new C++ developer. So with that, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you do, please give us a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.